And welcome back to our weekly Sports Night interview with our college football insider, Crissy Froyd. And we are discussing takeaways from college football week 3. And Crissy, there's a lot to discuss here. We have a new number 1 in college football. So let's start there. Let's start with Texas leapfrogging Georgia in the rankings. The Bulldogs were tested on the road against Kentucky. And Texas, they won big, but the story from their game was starting quarterback and Heisman hopeful Quinn Ewers left the game with an oblique injury. It sounds like Texas avoided a major injury with him, but Arch Manning stepped on, put a show on in relief of Ewers. And so I just want to get some of your thoughts on Texas being the new number 1 and the performance by Manning.
Yeah, I think that it's not that serious. I was kind of shocked to see that the AP poll had this kind of knee-jerk reaction. Georgia had some issues. It reminded me in the beginning of the Clemson game, but Georgia didn't have the same type of offensive resurgence against Kentucky, which was a little bit concerning. But okay, so it's week 3, so we have to consider moving forward through the rest of the schedule. We will find out how much of this was Kentucky correcting some seriously bad things against South Carolina. I mean, and then how much of this was Georgia sputtering. I mean, it's uncharacteristic, and Kirby Smart was clearly pretty heated about it. But I mean, who is Texas playing? Texas is playing UTSA. Texas is supposed to blow out UTSA. Arch Manning held the clipboard for a long time when was one of the best recruits in the nation, highly touted quarterback. We knew that this is what he was going to be. So what about Texas against a lower level competition team like that puts them above Georgia? I don't. It's a down week for Georgia. There were things that Georgia could have done better, but to react to this with an opponent like UTSA and go ahead and put Texas on top, I think that's a little bit much. Looking at Arch Manning alone, I think that he did a really good job. He has the mental processing of everyone else within his family tree that we expected. Nobody saw that over 20 miles per hour on that 67-yard touchdown run. So I think that he is going to be really exciting, really electric to watch as one of the most true dual threat quarterbacks we've ever seen, if this holds true throughout the rest of his career. I've seen some things like, oh, maybe he's going to take Quinn's job. I don't think he's going to take Quinn's job. I think that Sark doesn't roll like that. Paul Feinbaum said the same thing. And there is a reason, despite the things we saw from him against UTSA, there is a reason why Quinn Ewers was considered to be 1, 2, 3, one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. And I think that we still need to remember that.
Yeah, I agree. I think Manning looked great, but I just don't think it's his time quite yet. And I do think it's interesting to see a Manning that has some athletic ability, because with Peyton and Eli, I know those are his uncles, but you don't see them moving quite as easily and as quickly as we saw from Arch Manning. I want to follow up with something that you were talking about there. You talked about how Texas leapfrogged Georgia. So obviously you're not a fan of a team like Georgia losing the number 1 ranking after a win, even if it came in a close win against maybe a team that everyone thought they should have won by more. But just some of your thoughts on that. You're not a fan of the decision at all, huh?
No, I'm not, but I do think that Georgia has got to fix. It seems like there is an issue here with getting into rhythm offensively for all 4 quarters. And I mean, I covered Mississippi State with Mike Leach, and that was a consistent issue with that team under him, was playing a consistent 4 quarters. And I think we look at Georgia and kind of wonder, is against reasonable competition, Georgia going to struggle to play a consistent 4 quarters? So Mike Bobo, I think, made really good halftime adjustments against Clemson, but then we kind of wonder, is he going to be a problem? Is his play calling going to be a problem? Like, how are they going to continue to adjust? And I think Alabama is probably going to show us just how well Georgia can adjust and just how legitimate Georgia truly is as a team. Kentucky's defensive line is very stout, and people don't give Kentucky enough credit for that. Kentucky corrected a lot of its mistakes from the previous week. And so I think that shined through. And I think maybe Georgia wasn't really prepared for that.
Yeah, and you brought up Alabama there. Georgia idle this week before they take on Alabama at Tuscaloosa in just 2 weeks. That's going to be the first real big-time game of the college football season. That'll be a real good one. Now, speaking of cause for concern, Florida and Billy Napier, it has just been a complete disaster for him, during his time at Florida. And we've talked about this in past weeks. We talked about certain programs throughout the country that have a certain standard, and Florida is one of those programs. It's championships or bust for programs like Florida, and this team resembles nothing like a championship caliber team. And just some quick stats for you. Napier is 6-11 versus the SEC opponents. He has lost 7 straight games to Power 4 opponents. And if he doesn't get things right here in a hurry, Florida could be looking at their 3rd consecutive losing season. So I just want to get some of your thoughts on the future of Billy Napier. I know the seat is very, very warm, but how much longer could he sustain this? The fans were booing him after the game. He's aware of it. He said he deserves it. The team deserves it. Just some of your thoughts on Florida and Billy Napier.
Yeah, I'll tell you something from a personal perspective. When I was in college at LSU and shortly out after, Billy Napier was a legend around Lafayette. I mean, the things he was able to do with the Raging Cajuns were beyond what they had seen before. He had so much respect. There were a lot of people talking about how good of a person he was. So from a personal perspective, knowing these things that I didn't know him very well, I knew some of his players pretty well. But just hearing those things and looking at this, it's sad to know that this is who the person is at heart and how well he's done and who he is just on a personal level with the players and everything, and to watch them experience that kind of just vitriol. But at the same time, it is obvious that he is in over his head, and there's no excuse. I mean, he has a top 15 recruiting class, DJ Lagway, Gatorade Player of the Year. You land all of this, you still can't do anything with it. That is purely a product of coaching. And as someone who just said those things about the personal perspective, I am disgusted that he is not fired by Florida yet. There's no reason. This was a must-win game for him. He didn't win it, and I mean, I think his buyout's pretty high. It's around $28 million, but to me, it's worth paying $28 million to get this right. I'm only 25 years old. I've never seen Florida football in this state, and apparently it's the worst that they've looked since about 1950.
Yeah, it's got to get turned around quickly because it's just not good right now for that program and Billy Napier. Now, I want to get your reaction to this. I haven't had a chance to speak to you since we got this news about the Pac-12 adding 4 new teams: Fresno State, Colorado State, San Diego State. The other one slipping my mind right now, Boise State. That's who it is. I just want to get your reaction to that news when you heard it.
Yeah, I think it was surprising for all of us. We all thought the Pac-12 was dead. They became the Pac-2, and we kind of wrote them off as this is the end of the Pac-12, and everyone celebrated it and was sad about it and reflected on their memories, and that was supposed to be it. And then here it is. It's kind of crazy that it's back altogether. I think it's going to be interesting, though. I mean, they've added some good teams. Fresno State was in the Mountain West, and I think Fresno State's a real contender with just about anybody. So I think that's going to be a force in the Pac-12. But it's going to be interesting to watch how this develops, and maybe, weirdly enough, it's a better conference than it used to be.
Yeah, and I know they want to get to that number of 8 teams, so it'll be interesting to see. I've heard a lot of speculation about which teams could possibly be who they could be going after next. So it'll be interesting to see exactly who they do decide to add there in the near future. We are now heading into week 4 of the college football season. I think teams are starting to kind of solidify their status. We're starting to see some teams, near the top of the rankings, as true powerhouses and whatnot. But is there a team, as you look around the country, is there a team that you think has played really well that's kind of flown under under the radar nationally that you think deserves a little bit more attention?
Yeah, South Carolina. I think that much is extremely obvious. South Carolina, it's interesting. It's even more interesting now because South Carolina blew out Kentucky by 25 points in Kentucky's own house. Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Georgia's the best team in the nation. I know that Texas technically is right now. I don't believe that. But they came that close, Kentucky did, to doing that. And so I think that says a lot about South Carolina. And then we talk about the fact that, South Carolina could have made a statement by beating LSU. If Lenora Sellers does not exit that game with an injury and they don't have to switch to Robbie Ashford, bear in mind, both of these quarterbacks have completely different skill sets. You're changing your whole offense on a whim without expecting it or game planning for this at all against a superior opponent. That's really, really hard. And yet South Carolina was one field goal away. in spite of all that, from taking LSU to overtime, and in several aspects, outperformed LSU. In my opinion, with Sellers, this is a better team than LSU. And all those things considered, nobody was talking about South Carolina in the offseason at all. I think this is a team that is a true contender, and it is a testament to what Shane Beamer has done in Columbia. So I'm really excited to watch what the Gamecocks continue to do. And I look back at last year, too. Spencer Rattler did a really good job there. And if they had a better offensive line and a better supporting cast, I think South Carolina is just waiting in the wings to being one of the best teams in the SEC.
Yeah, I think that's a good one there by you. Let's look ahead now to the week 4 slate. There's a couple of games. I was looking at the schedule that looks like they could be really, really good matchups. I want to start with USC and Michigan. This new Big Ten, this new alignment. I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. We know that Michigan is making a change at starting quarterback. It'll be Alex Orji under center now for the Wolverines. What are you expecting to see in this one?
I think Michigan has a lot of issues, and Michigan is not what it was last year. Not even close. There's a huge gap. I think that USC might actually wipe the floor with Michigan, if we're being quite honest. Offensive firepower is there. What Miller Moss can do is there. I think USC is by far the superior team, and I think that we'll just continue to watch Michigan plummet down the rankings and perhaps even be out within the next few weeks.
Yeah, and then we go to the SEC for another real unique matchup with these new conferences. You have Tennessee and Oklahoma, and I think Tennessee is, we talked about it last week. I think Tennessee is playing as good as any team in the country right now. Might be getting a little bit overlooked. I know they're ranked quite high in the rankings, but I don't think we're hearing enough about them. But they take on Oklahoma. And, neither of these teams has truly been tested as far as competition is concerned. Tennessee did beat NC State, who was ranked 24th at the time. But I think we're going to learn a lot about both of these teams. What's your take on this matchup with Tennessee and Oklahoma?
Yeah, this might be a statement game for Tennessee in a way, but Oklahoma is the same team that hurt itself so badly that it almost lost to Houston, which Houston is one of the worst teams in its conference. Houston is horrible this year under Willie Fritz. And so we take that same team. Yes, Oklahoma is still ranked pretty well, but I think Tennessee's far superior. So what Tennessee's probably going to do under the power of Nico Iamaleava is they're going to blow them out, is what I anticipate is going to happen. So it's going to be viewed as a big win for Tennessee because of where Oklahoma stands in the rankings. But I think we're going to find that Oklahoma, unless it consistently gets its act together, is not as good of a team as we thought it was. So there's two ways to view this, but I think that Tennessee is for real, and I can't wait to see the Volunteers go up against someone who's actually really good.
So there you heard it. Big time statement wins by USC and Tennessee. For you savvy bettors out there, you might want to take Crissy's advice. She is our college football insider. You can follow her on X at Crissy_Froyd. And you can expect to hear from us again next week talking about the week 4 takeaways. Crissy, thanks so much for the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.